The colony world was silent under the pale light of two moons. The land looked peaceful from far away, but deep inside every home fear was growing. People whispered behind closed doors. No one dared to speak too loud, because something was happening. Something dark. Something no human could believe. They said humans were eating their own wives. It sounded like madness, like a story to scare children, but more and more people had gone missing, and the truth was becoming too heavy to ignore. In the center of this colony lived a young woman named Ilara. She was not a fighter. She was not a leader. She was simply a wife, trying to survive in a world far from Earth. She loved her husband, Kale. He had once been kind, strong, always smiling, but now his eyes were changing. His smile was gone, his touch had grown cold. At night, Kale would leave their home. He would say he needed to meet other men, to work, to prepare food. But Ilara knew it was a lie. She felt it in her heart. She could smell strange smoke in his clothes when he returned. She could see the hunger in his eyes. But it was not hunger for food. It was hunger for something else, something dangerous, Ilara's neighbor. An old woman named Riva told her in a whisper, "Child, the men are not the same anymore. The aliens have poisoned them. They eat what no human should eat. Soon they will turn on us." Just like they turned on their wives, Ilara wanted to scream, to tell Riva she was wrong. But deep inside she remembered the faces of the missing women. She remembered their laughter, and how suddenly they had vanished. No bodies, no graves, only silence. And the men always said the same thing. She went into the desert. She could not handle the life here, but Ilara knew. No woman would walk alone into the desert. No woman would leave her children. Something else was happening, something cruel. One night, Ilara followed Kale as he left the house. She kept her steps quiet, her breath soft. The colony streets were empty. Shadows stretched long under the cold moons. Kyle walked quickly, his head low, and Ilara's heart beat faster with every step. He went beyond the farms, beyond the water tanks, until he reached a cave at the edge of the rocky hills. Ilara hid behind a stone and watched inside the cave. Torches burned with a strange green fire. Men stood in a circle, their eyes wide and glowing in the dark. They chanted words Ilara could not understand. And in the center of the circle lay bowls of meat. Red and steaming, the smell was heavy, sharp, wrong. Ilara's stomach turned. She wanted to run, but her legs froze, because she saw the aliens' tall insect-like creatures, their black eyes glittering, their long arms clicking as they moved. They watched the men eat. They whispered in voices that sounded like knives scraping against stone, and the men obeyed. Kale stepped forward, his face empty, his hands shaking. He picked up a piece of meat. He raised it to his mouth, and Ilara bit her lip until she bled. Tears burned her eyes. She prayed it was not what she thought, prayed it was only animal meat, but in her heart she knew. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. They eat what no human should eat. She pressed her hand to her mouth to stop the scream rising inside her. Her husband, the man who once kissed her forehead, who once held her close under the stars, was now kneeling before aliens, eating flesh that might not be from an animal at all. Ilara stumbled back, a stone rolled under her foot. The sound cracked in the silence. Kale's head turned. His glowing eyes scanned the shadows. For one moment, Ilara thought he saw her. For one moment, his face looked almost human again. But then he turned back to the circle, chewing slowly, the trance pulling him deeper. Ilara ran back to the colony, her heart beating like a drum, the night colder than ever, every step heavy with fear. When she reached her home, she locked the door, pressed her back against it, and closed her eyes, her hands shaking, her breath broken. She whispered to herself, "This cannot be real." It cannot be true, but she knew it was. Her husband was gone, not dead, not alive, but changed. Something had taken his mind. Something was controlling him, and soon it would come for her too. The colony world looked peaceful under the two moons, but inside every home fear was growing. Ilara knew the nightmare had only just begun, and she was running out of time. The next morning, Ilara woke to silence. The kind of silence that felt heavy, pressing down on her chest. Kale was gone. He had left before dawn. His side of the bed was cold, and the smell of smoke still clung to the blanket. She walked through the small home, touching the wooden table, the worn chair, the cracked cup on the shelf. Every corner whispered memories of the man she once knew, the man who laughed, the man who built this house with his hands. But now every object felt strange, as if it belonged to a stranger, not her husband outside. The colony was waking. Women carried water. Children ran through the dust. Men moved in silence, their faces pale, their eyes dull. Ilara noticed something she had not seen before. The men no longer spoke much. They only nodded to each other, as if words were no longer needed, as if something else connected them. She met Riva near the well. The old woman's eyes were sharp, her voice low. "You followed him, didn't you?" she asked. And Ilara froze. She wanted to deny it. But her lips betrayed her. She whispered, "I saw them. I saw what they ate." Riva nodded slowly, her wrinkled hand tightening around the bucket rope. "Then you know, child, you know the truth. We are living among ghosts. Their bodies walk, but their souls are gone." Ilara's chest tightened. She wanted to scream at Riva, to ask why no one was fighting back, why no one was warning the women. But the old woman shook her head before Ilara could speak. "Silence keeps us alive. The aliens hear everything. They see everything if we shout the truth. We die." Later that day, Kale returned. His hands were dirty. His clothes smelled of ash. He kissed her cheek. The touch was cold, and his eyes did not meet hers. Ilara's heart broke in that moment, because she realized the man she loved was fading. Piece by piece, she cooked stew with the last of their vegetables. Kale ate without looking up, his spoon moving like a machine. Ilara forced herself to watch his every move, searching for a sign, a shadow of the man he once was. But all she saw was emptiness. That night, as Kale slept, Ilara sat near the window staring at the moons. She thought of the women who had vanished, their laughter still echoing in her mind. She thought of the bowls in the cave, the steaming red meat, and her stomach twisted. Her fear was no longer only for herself. It was for every woman in the colony, mothers, daughters, sisters, wives. None of them were safe, and yet no one dared to speak. The silence was killing them slowly. The next evening, Ilara saw something that shook her even more. She walked past the market, where traders sold dried roots and water jars, and there she saw Mira, a woman from the East Farm. Her face pale, her eyes wide. She walked alone, clutching a bundle. Ilara called her name, but Mira only shook her head quickly. Her lips trembling, she whispered, "Don't ask, don't follow," and then hurried away, disappearing into the alleys. That night Mira was gone. Her house stood empty. Her husband sat outside, staring at the stars with a blank face, and no one asked questions. Ilara's fear grew into rage. Her mind screamed, "How can they all stay silent? How can they watch their wives vanish and say nothing?" But then she remembered Kale's glowing eyes, the chanting in the cave, the aliens watching, and she understood. It was not silence by choice, it was silence by chains. A week passed. Kale grew thinner. His hands shook when he held tools, but his strength returned when night fell. When he disappeared into the hills, Ilara followed once more. But this time she stayed farther back. Her breath slow, her steps careful. She saw not one, but 3 groups of men walking toward the caves, their eyes all glowing faintly under the moon. She realized the sickness was spreading faster. Soon the whole colony would be taken. Ilara returned home before Kale, her body shaking. She lit a small candle and held it close, whispering to herself, "I will not die like this. I will not vanish." When Kale entered, she pretended to sleep. But through half-closed eyes, she saw him stand over her, his shadow long on the wall, his breath heavy, his fingers twitching. For a moment she thought he would touch her. For a moment she thought he would strike. But then he turned away, laying down on the far side of the bed. Silent, Ilara lay awake until dawn, her eyes burning, her mind racing. She knew she had only 2 choices: stay and become a victim, or act and risk everything. The colony world under the 2 moons seemed calm to outsiders, but inside every woman's heart a storm was rising. Ilara's fear was no longer fear alone, it was becoming resolve. She did not know how, she did not know when, but deep inside she promised herself one thing: she would survive even if the whole world turned against her. The nights grew colder on the colony world, the air sharp with dust, the moons hanging low and heavy. Ilara felt the weight of each passing day. Kyle was slipping further away, and with him, the last pieces of safety she once knew. She could no longer ignore the truth. The men were meeting in secret, the aliens were guiding them, and women were vanishing one by one. Ilara's heart told her that waiting in silence would only lead her to the same end. So she decided she would follow Kale again. But this time she would not stop until she saw everything. When the colony slept, Ilara wrapped herself in a dark shawl. She waited until Kale rose from bed, his steps slow, his eyes glassy. He left without a word, moving like a shadow through the empty streets. Ilara followed, her breath shallow, her feet barely touching the sand. He walked beyond the farms, past the dried wells, into the hills where sharp rocks cut the ground. The cave waited ahead, torches flickering at its mouth, and Alara hid behind a stone, her hands trembling, her body pressed low. This time more men had gathered, their faces pale under the torchlight, their eyes glowing faint green. They stood in silence as the aliens entered, tall and insect-like, their black eyes reflecting the flames, their limbs moving with slow, deliberate grace. The air itself seemed to bend around them, cold and heavy. One alien carried a silver vessel, long and narrow, etched with strange symbols that shimmered like fireflies. Another carried a bowl covered with cloth, steam rising from beneath it. The smell drifted into the cave, sharp and metallic. The leader of the men, a tall farmer named Darren, stepped forward, his voice hollow. "We are ready," he said, and the aliens clicked their jaws in reply, a sound that made Alara's skin crawl. The cloth was lifted, the bowl revealed, and Alara's breath caught in her throat. Inside was meat, red and soft, but it was not the meat of any animal she had ever seen. The shape was wrong, the color too human. Darren took the first piece, his hand steady. He raised it high, and the men chanted, their voices low and broken. Then he bit into it. Blood ran down his chin. The sound of chewing echoed in the cave. Alara pressed her hand to her mouth. Fighting the scream rising in her chest, she wanted to close her eyes, but her body refused, forcing her to watch. Cale stepped forward next, his eyes empty, his hands shaking. He reached for the bowl, took a piece, and as he placed it in his mouth, Alara's heart shattered. She saw the truth. He was gone. Her husband was no longer her husband. He was a shell, a puppet, a slave to something unholy. The aliens clicked again, the sound sharp, commanding, and the men knelt as if in worship. The leader alien raised its long arm, placing it over the silver vessel. A thin mist rose from it, drifting across the men. Their eyes glowed brighter. Their bodies stiffened. They were being bound tighter to the will of their masters. Alara's vision blurred with tears, but through the haze she saw something that froze her blood. Near the back of the cave, in the shadows, lay shapes, human shapes, small and still, wrapped in cloth. Her body turned to ice. She knew then where the women had gone. She knew what the men had eaten. She stumbled back. A stone cracked under her foot. The sound echoed like thunder in her ears. Cale's head jerked up, his eyes scanning the shadows. The alien leader turned slowly, its black eyes glinting, its limbs twitching. Alara pressed herself flat against the rock, her heart beating so hard she thought it would give her away. The torches flickered. The chanting stopped. The air grew sharp with silence. For one endless moment, the alien's gaze lingered on the darkness where she hid, its head tilting, listening, but then it turned back, clicking again. The men resumed their chant. Cale lowered his head. The ritual continued. Alara crawled backward, her hands scraping against stone, her breath trapped in her chest. When she finally reached the open night, she ran, her shawl flying behind her, her tears mixing with dust. She did not stop until she reached her home, her body shaking, her chest burning. She locked the door, leaned against it, and slid to the floor, her whispers breaking into the empty room. It's true, they're gone, they're all gone." That night, she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Cale with blood on his lips. She saw the bodies in the cave. She heard the aliens clicking, commanding. The colony looked the same the next morning. Children still laughed, women still fetched water, men still worked the fields. But Alara knew the truth beneath the surface. A sickness was spreading, and soon there would be no women left. She stared at Cale as he ate bread at the table, his face calm, his hands steady. And for a moment she almost believed nothing was wrong. But then his eyes lifted, glowing faint in the sunlight, and Alara's blood turned cold. Her fear was no longer silent. It was screaming inside her, louder each day. She knew she could not stay. She knew she could not trust him, or any of the men. The colony was falling. The aliens were winning, and Alara was running out of time. The days after the secret gathering felt endless. Alara moved through them like a shadow, her face calm, her voice steady. But inside her chest, fear burned like fire. She had seen too much. She had learned the truth, and now she knew her own husband might one day turn on her. Cale no longer looked at her with love. His eyes glowed faintly even in daylight. His movements were stiff, and at night he disappeared into the hills, sometimes returning with smoke on his clothes, sometimes with blood on his hands, though he tried to wash it away before dawn. Alara pretended not to see, she pretended not to know, but her silence was only a mask. Inside her mind she repeated one thought again and again. I must leave or I will die, but leaving was not simple. The colony was surrounded by desert, hot by day, frozen by night. Food was scarce, water even scarcer, and the aliens had patrols, tall insect-like figures that moved silently along the ridges. Watching, always watching, still she began to prepare. She hid pieces of bread under the floor. She filled a small leather pouch with water. She gathered cloth for the cold nights, her hands trembling every time she touched these things. Afraid Kyle would notice, afraid he would ask questions one evening. As Kale slept in a heavy trance, Ilara slipped out of the house. The moons cast pale light across the colony. The streets were empty, the homes silent. She moved quickly, clutching her bundle, her heart pounding. She had almost reached the outer fields when a sound stopped her, footsteps behind her, heavy and uneven. She turned slowly, and her blood froze. Kyle stood there, his face empty, his eyes glowing, his breath slow and harsh. "Ilara," he said, his voice deep but broken. "Where are you going?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to lie, to say she was fetching water, to say she was looking for Riva, but his eyes told her lies would not save her. He stepped closer, his fingers twitching as if struggling to control themselves. "You should not walk alone at night, it is dangerous," he whispered. And for one brief moment his voice sounded almost human, almost like the man she loved. But then his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. "Too strong, too fast," Ilara gasped. The bundle fell to the ground. "Kale's grip like iron. Come back," he said, his voice hollow again. "You belong with me. You belong to us." Ilara's fear exploded into fury. She twisted, clawed at his hand, kicked his leg. He stumbled back for a heartbeat. Enough for her to grab a stone and strike his arm. His grip loosened and she ran. She ran into the desert, the wind tearing at her shawl, the sand stinging her skin, her lungs burning with every breath. Behind her she heard Kale's footsteps, heavy and fast, his voice echoing, "Ilara, come back, you cannot escape." The moons lit her path faintly, but the desert stretched endless, rocks sharp beneath her feet, her bundle lost, her water gone. Yet she did not stop, she could not stop. Kale's voice grew closer, his steps pounding the ground, and then another sound joined it. A clicking, sharp and metallic. The aliens they had followed. Ilara's heart nearly broke, but she forced her legs to move faster. She darted between stone pillars, slipped through cracks in the rocks until she found a narrow canyon. She pressed herself into the shadows, her breath ragged. Kyle passed by, his glowing eyes scanning the darkness. The aliens followed, their limbs scraping against stone, their black eyes searching. Ilara pressed her hands over her mouth, praying they would not hear her heart. Minutes stretched like hours until finally their footsteps faded. Their clicks grew distant and silence returned. Ilara's body collapsed against the wall, tears spilling down her cheeks. She whispered to herself, "I cannot go back. I cannot." The desert night grew colder. Her body shook. Hunger clawed at her stomach. Thirst burned her throat. She knew she could not survive long alone, but she also knew she would never return to Kale. Not after what she had seen in his eyes. Not after what he had become. She stumbled onward, each step heavier, the stars sharp above her, the land endless, her hope flickering like the weak flame of a candle, until at last in the distance she saw a faint light. It was small, hidden among rocks, but it was there. A fire, faint and real. Her heart leapt. Her legs carried her toward it, though every part of her screamed with exhaustion. As she drew closer, shapes moved around the fire. Not aliens, not men with glowing eyes, but humans, their faces sharp, their eyes clear, their voices low. One of them saw her, a young woman with scars on her cheek. She raised a knife, her voice steady. "Who are you, stranger? Why do you come here?" Ilara fell to her knees, her breath broken, her words trembling. "Please help me, they have taken him. They have taken them all." The group exchanged glances, and the scarred woman stepped forward, lowering the knife, her eyes filled with both suspicion and pity. "You have escaped," she whispered. "Then you are one of us." Ilara's body collapsed into their arms, her mind sinking into darkness, but before she drifted away she heard one last whisper. "You are not alone, there is a resistance, and we will fight." When Ilara woke, the fire was low, the desert wind soft against her skin. For one moment she thought she had dreamed it all, the cave, the chanting, Kale's glowing eyes. But then she heard voices, quiet, careful, strong, and she knew she was not dreaming. She was lying under a rough blanket, her throat still dry, her body aching, and around her sat 5 strangers, men and women, their eyes sharp, their faces tired, yet alive in a way the colony men were not. They watched her closely, waiting. The scarred woman spoke first, her voice calm but firm. "You are safe, for now. But safety never lasts long. Tell us your name, Ilara, she whispered, her voice weak. My name is Ilara. The group exchanged glances, then nodded as if the name carried weight. As if others had spoken it before, the scarred woman leaned closer. You ran from them, didn't you? You saw what they do. Ilara's chest tightened. She wanted to close her eyes and forget, but the memories burned too deep. She nodded slowly. I saw the cave, the meat, the bodies. I saw the aliens watching. Controlling, her voice broke. And I saw my husband, eating. For a moment, no one spoke. The fire cracked softly. The desert breathed. Then an older man with gray in his beard leaned forward, his eyes full of sorrow. Then you understand, child? This colony is not ours anymore. It belongs to them. They twist the men. They feed them poison. They turn them against us. Ilara's tears fell. Why are they doing this? Why make men monsters? Why make wives vanish? The scarred woman answered, her tone hard as stone. Because they do not want us to fight. They want us broken. They want us hopeless. They know no soldier can kill you like your own husband can. No war can shatter you like betrayal can. Ilara felt her stomach twist, the truth heavier than any nightmare. But then the young man by the fire spoke, his voice softer. Not all men are gone. Some escape the control. Some resist. We hide here far from their machines. We gather those who still fight, women, children, the few men untouched. Ilara looked at their faces. She saw scars, wounds, hunger, but also fire. The kind of fire she thought had vanished. The kind of fire she thought she had lost. The scarred woman stood, walking to a small rock wall at the edge of the canyon. She pulled aside cloth and revealed a narrow passage. A hidden path she gestured for Ilara to follow. Her legs shook, but she rose. The group followed. And together they moved through the passage, the air cool and damp, the ground sloping down, until they entered a cavern lit by faint crystals. And there Ilara gasped. Dozens of people were inside. Women clutching children, men sharpening tools, old and young alike. Their eyes tired but awake, alive, not glowing, not empty. Ilara felt tears spill again. For the first time in weeks, she saw humanity untouched. Fragile but real, she whispered. You are the resistance. The scarred woman nodded. We are what is left. We are what they fear. Because as long as even one human refuses their control, their victory is not complete. An older woman stepped forward. Her face lined, her voice deep. You carry sorrow, but also strength. Tell us, Ilara. Do you still wish to live? Do you still wish to fight? Ilara's heart pounded. She thought of Kale, his eyes glowing, his hands clutching her wrist, his voice broken between love and command. She thought of the women who vanished, of Mira, of Riva's warning, and she whispered, yes, I want to fight. I want to live. The cavern stirred with murmurs, some doubtful, some hopeful. The scarred woman placed a hand on Ilara's shoulder. Then you will learn, you will see what we know. But you must be ready. The truth is heavier than the desert stones. That night, they showed her their secret. Deep within the cavern, hidden under cloth and stone, lay strange pieces of alien technology. Broken, stolen from patrols, glowing faintly with green light, the older man explained. These machines, they are the key. They spread the poison into the men's minds. They whisper commands. They chain them without chains. But here, far from their towers, the signal is weak. Here we are free. Ilara stared at the glowing shards, her hands trembling. Then we can destroy them. We can end this. The scarred woman shook her head slowly. Not so simple, child. The machines are many and guarded. Every attempt has cost lives. We are few. We must wait. We must plan. But Ilara felt a fire grow inside her, stronger than her fear, stronger than her grief. She thought of her husband, trapped in chains of the mind, his body still alive but his soul stolen. She thought of all the women gone, and she whispered, Then teach me to fight, teach me to survive. The scarred woman studied her, her eyes sharp, then finally nodded. You will learn, but remember, survival is not victory. Victory comes when they are gone, when no woman hides, when no man kneels before them. That night, as Ilara lay among strangers who had become something more, she stared at the cavern roof glittering with faint light, her heart heavy but her spirit rising. For the first time she felt she was not alone. For the first time she believed there was hope. Yet in the darkness she also knew the price of hope. It would demand everything, and perhaps it would days turned into weeks inside the hidden cavern. Ilara learned to move silently, to hold a knife steady, to strike with speed if cornered. She learned to read the desert, to find water in dry places, To hide her tracks from alien patrols, her fear was still inside her, but now it lived beside a growing fire. The resistance watched her closely. Some trusted her, others doubted. But the scarred woman, whose name was Lyra, stood beside her always, guiding, testing, reminding her that survival was not enough. Survival without freedom was another form of chains. One night, Lyra led her to the edge of the desert cliffs. The colony lights faint below and far beyond the alien base, black towers glowing with green pulses, like veins carrying poison into the night sky. Lyra pointed. "That is the heart, Ilara. The machines are there. The signal spreads from there. If it falls, their hold will weaken, but the cost will be heavy." Ilara's chest tightened. She saw the towers. She thought of Kale inside one of them. Perhaps chained, perhaps already gone. And she whispered, "If the machines fall, maybe he will return." Lyra's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "Or maybe he will die with them." "Child, hope is dangerous. You must be ready for both." The plan formed quickly. Too quickly, the resistance could not wait much longer. More women vanished each week. More men joined the chance. Soon no one would be left to fight, so they prepared, gathering what weapons they had. Stolen knives, broken rifles, shards of alien tech that sparked faint light. Ilara stood among them, her hands steady now, her eyes burning with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. She did not know if she would live another dawn, but she knew she could not run anymore when the night came. They moved like shadows across the desert, the towers rising taller with each step, the air colder, sharper, filled with a faint hum that pressed against their skulls, the alien signal, whispering at the edge of thought. 2 patrols passed, tall insect-like figures, their black eyes scanning, their limbs clicking against stone, but the resistance hid in cracks and shadows, waiting, holding breath, moving only when silence returned. At last they reached the base. The black walls smooth, the green veins pulsing, and a wide entrance glowing faintly, guarded by 2 aliens, their limbs sharp as blades. Lyra raised her hand, the group split. 2 men threw stones far to the side, the sound echoed. The guards turned, and in that heartbeat the resistance rushed in. Knives flashing, throats cut, silence returned. Inside, the walls glowed faint green, the air thick with the hum of machines. Ilara's stomach twisted. Every step deeper felt like stepping into the belly of a beast until at last they entered the chamber. And there she froze. Dozens of men knelt in rows, their eyes glowing, their mouths chanting. Wires ran into their heads, pulsing with green light. And in the center stood the great machine, tall, alive, breathing with power, its core glowing, its sound like 1,000 whispers. And there, strapped to a frame, was Kale, his body thin, his skin pale, his eyes closed, wires running into his skull, his chest rising weakly. Ilara's breath broke. She stumbled forward, whispering his name, Kyle. Kale, his eyes flickered open, faint, glowing green. But for a moment she saw something human inside them. His lips trembled and a whisper escaped. Ilara, her knees weakened. Her tears burning, she reached for him. But Lyra's hand grabbed her arm, her voice low and sharp. "No, child, the machine binds him. If we destroy it, he may not live, but if we leave it, none of us will live, demand blood." Her knees weakened, her tears burning. She reached for him, but Lyra's hand grabbed her arm, her voice low and sharp. "No, child, the machine binds him. If we destroy it, he may not live, but if we leave it, none of us will live." Ilara's heart tore, the machine hummed louder. The men chanted stronger. The aliens were coming, their clicks echoing in the halls. There was no time. She looked at Kale, his eyes flickering between green and brown. "Between alien and human," he whispered again, softer. "End it, Ilara, free them." Her hands shook. Her breath broke, but she knew she could not save him and save the rest. She raised the stolen rifle, aimed at the machine's glowing core, her tears blinding her, her heart screaming, and she fired. The chamber exploded with light. The machine cracked, the wires burst. The chanting stopped. Men collapsed, free but broken. Kyle's body shook violently. His mouth opened in a silent scream, and then he stilled. His eyes closing, his breath gone. The aliens rushed in, their screeches sharp. Their limbs slicing, the resistance fought. Blood spilled, cries echoed, but the machine was broken. Its hum silenced, its glow fading, and the alien stumbled, weaker without its power. Ilara held Kale's body, his face pale, his lips still curved with the last whisper of love. She pressed her forehead to his, her tears falling. I'm sorry. Lyra pulled her away, shouting, "We must go, child, we must live, for him, for all of them." The resistance dragged the survivors out, the towers behind them burning with sparks. The desert night filled with green fire. The war had begun. Ilara stumbled across the sand. Her heart shattered, her arms empty. But her spirit burning. Kale was gone, yet his last words echoed in her soul. Free them, and she knew. This was only the beginning. The desert was silent after the fire. The alien tower lay broken, its green veins dim, its whispers gone. The sky above was filled with smoke and faint sparks, the moons hidden behind a veil of ash. Ilara walked among the survivors, her body weak, her heart heavy. Every step felt like carrying stone. She looked at the faces around her. Men freed from the machine, lying unconscious on the sand. Women crying over them, children holding tightly to their mothers. The resistance bruised and bleeding, yet alive. Kale was gone, his body wrapped in cloth, carried by two men toward the canyon. Ilara walked behind them, her tears silent. Her lips pressed together. Inside her chest was a storm. Love, grief, rage, and fire. In the cavern, they laid him on the ground among others who had fallen. The scarred woman Lyra placed a hand on Ilara's shoulder, her voice soft for the first time. He was brave, child. Even in chains, he found a way to speak. He gave you strength, hold that. Not the pain. But Ilara could not hold only that. She remembered his eyes glowing, his hands grabbing her wrist, his voice hollow. She remembered the man who was gone long before she fired the shot. And yet she also remembered his last whisper, free them. And she knew his soul had returned in that final breath. The resistance gathered, their fire casting long shadows on the cavern walls. The older man with the gray beard spoke. We have cut one chain, but many remain. The aliens will not forget. They will come again, stronger, angrier. We must be ready, the people murmured. Some hopeful, some afraid. Ilara stood among them. Her hands clenched, her voice steady. They want us broken, but we are not broken. They want us silent, but we will not be silent. They want us gone, but we will live. Her words echoed. Filling the cavern, the children lifted their heads. The women straightened their backs. The men who still had strength looked at her with new fire. In the days that followed, the resistance grew. Freedmen slowly recovered, weak and scarred, but their eyes clear, no longer glowing. Some wept, some raged. All carried guilt for what they had done. Ilara watched them, her heart torn, but she knew they were victims too, prisoners of a war they had not chosen. She spent hours at Kale's side, sitting beside the cloth that covered him, whispering to him, telling him of her promise, that his death would not be in vain. That she would carry his memory into every battle, into every breath. But the aliens were not still. Scouts appeared at the edge of the desert, tall figures watching from the ridges, their clicks echoing faintly across the night. The resistance saw them, and fear spread one evening. Lyra gathered the fighters, her voice sharp. They are preparing. They will strike soon. They will not allow us another victory. We must leave this cavern. We must take the fight to them, or they will bury us alive. The older man disagreed. We are few, we are weak, we must hide longer. But Ilara stepped forward, her eyes burning. If we hide, they win. If we wait, more women vanish, more men fall. We cannot live in caves while they feed on us. We must rise. The cavern fell silent. Then slowly voices rose in agreement. The choice was made. That night, they buried their dead, Kale among them. Under a mound of stone marked with a simple sign, Ilara stood long after the others left. Her hand on the rocks, her tears falling silently, she whispered, I will carry you with me. Always I will fight for you, for all of us. When dawn came, the resistance moved out. No longer hiding, no longer silent, their steps steady, their weapons crude but ready. The desert stretched before them, dangerous, endless, but it was theirs, and they would not give it up. Ilara walked at the front, her shawl wrapped tight, the wind sharp against her face, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She was no longer only a wife, no longer only a survivor, she was something more. As the sun rose, the sky burned red, and in the distance, ships descended, black and sharp, alien fleets darkening the light. The war was coming. Ilara did not look away. Her voice rose above the desert wind. Let them come. We are ready. The resistance lifted their heads, their eyes filled with fire, and together they marched toward the storm. The colony world under the two moons was no longer silent. Its people had found their voice, their fury, their hope, and the war for humanity had only just begun.